All right, what's going on, guys? This is the second installment in the Beginner Traders playlist. Today, we're going to be talking about time. We're going to be discussing the AMD from the weekly and daily perspectives, and we're also going to talk about the importance of matching your instrument with the current time. So, let's get into it. All right, so time is one of the most important parts of trading. Understanding this and how it affects price allows us to identify high probability setups and know around exactly when price should begin to expand. The AMD or quarterly theory is actually one of the strongest tools that we use to help us filter through our setups and figure out not only when, but kind of also where price will expand. Because as you get more advanced and get a deeper understanding of how the charts work, you'll start to understand that not only price, fair value gaps, and liquidity that are present, but time itself can also indicate, before we get any movement, can indicate which direction we're going to head to. So let's go ahead and get into the next slide. So moving on to the AMD. Um, quarterly theory slash the AMD. So this helps us easily read price and understand the potential outcomes for the following days or current day in the following sessions or current session. So for our weekly in our what we call intersession, which is obviously within a session. So when you break a session up into quarters, um, you see all the phases are the same. Accumulation in Q1, manipulation in Q2, then our distribution, or second manipulation in Q3, and then that continuation or reversal in Q4. And I wanted to put these up side by side so you guys can really see that they're the exact same. We're looking for the exact same movement. So let's go ahead and get into the next slide. So we must always avoid trading instruments that do not correspond with the current session. So what I mean by this is, say, a pair like ES, S&P 500, and say a pair like USD JPY, right? The sessions that correlate out of Asia, London, New York AM, and New York PM, also known as Sydney session, the sessions that correlate with USD JPY are all sessions except for London, right? That's the only, none of those, the US dollar and the yen, none of those correlate with Europe. Those are not traded in Europe, or used as currencies anywhere in Europe. So, and also with ES, that's the S&P 500. So that's completely US, New York AM, New York PM, or Sydney session. You can trade it in London. You just have to be careful and you have to have data and experience to do that. I do not, so I avoid London, and Asia is obviously, you shouldn't be trading that regardless on something like ES. So unless there's a high impact news event present, we should expect price to consolidate or retrace during sessions that don't correlate with that instrument. And then during the correlated sessions, that is when we should expect our expansion. All right, so sorry, there was a typo actually in the opening slide. We're not going to be focusing on the weekly AMD today. We're going to be focusing on the daily AMD and the intersession AMD. So just for reference, when I say the weekly AMD, I'm referring to the AMD for that week. When I say the daily AMD, I'm referring to the AMD for that day. Intersession and AMD for that session. So, all right, so we can start over here just to show you how this AMD works the same way and typically happens the same way on all time frames. So I want you to think of this, instead of thinking this as Asia or London or New York or Q4 or whatever. Think about this like Monday. Think about this like Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So get our arranging, our accumulation Q1 or on Monday. Then we get manipulation in Q2 or on Tuesday. We come and take Q1's high. And then now our options for Q3. Sorry. Our options as we come into Q3, or what would be this Wednesday, would be this high, which if we're thinking about these like daily candles, This would be previous day's high. And this would be the AMD target. Now, keep in mind, this is not previous day's high. This is just London sessions high. But to make it easier, and the reason that I have this indicator on, just think about this like it's days. So this is our manipulation. This is our continuation. Our distribution. All right, we go ahead and end up getting more manipulation. If price wants to, it could go ahead and start this movement towards the AMD, our last day to take this target out. The AMD is live until Q4. So Q4 could continue and go past previous day's low or New York lows in this case, and then continue to the AMD target. Or it could reverse for us. These two are the bare minimum points that we're looking for. On a Thursday, it would be previous day's high or previous day's low. For what we're looking at right now on the daily AMD, it would be previous sessions high or previous sessions. All right, I'm not quite sure if it's lagging on the audio end, but anyways, we end up going ahead and getting some continuation, but it wasn't strong enough for us to follow through and take out this AMD target, right? On a Thursday, we would want to catch this move down from here to here. If you're a scalper, you would want to catch this move in Q4 of the day. So in New York PM, you would want to catch this move in maybe a 5 minute or 1 minute for value gap around this area, then take it down to here with your take profit. Then we start to move the other day. That's fine. Don't care. So this is what the daily AMD looks like. This is what I'm referring to when I talk about it, right? Whatever time frame I'm saying the AMD is, break that up into quarters. So when I'm saying weekly AMD, that means break the week up into quarters. Daily AMD, break the day up into quarters. Intersession, break the session up into quarters. So I'll find you another example of the AMD following through in a textbook-like fashion on this daily perspective, and then we'll go down into the intersession AMD. All right, so here we have a perfect example of the AMD in itself. And so this is exactly what we want, regardless of what time frame we're on. When we're looking for that AMD, when we've got the time period we want to trade broken up into quarters, we want to see these same things. So in Q1, we want our accumulation. Q2, we want our manipulation. Our manipulation would look like previous sessions high or previous sessions low. All right, we come and take out previous sessions low. We've gotten our manipulation. Now coming into the next quarter, which would be Q3, we're looking for our AMD target to get hit, which is up here at Q1's high, or we're expecting more manipulation, and that would be down here at Q2's low. And we get a textbook AMD follow through, but we're still not done because we've still got a protocol for Q4. Protocol for Q4 would be previous sessions high or previous sessions low. Why? Because, actually probably be better if I said previous quarters high or previous quarters low. But why? Because in Q4 we expect continuation or reversal. Continuation would look like exactly what it says, a continuation of what we experienced in the last quarter. Our last quarter would be this last session because we're looking at it from the daily perspective, and this last quarter went bullish for the most part, right? We made all of this movement. I would be confident in saying that's bullish. It's not really going to be hard to see. It may look a little weird on the 1 hour. If you need to, go down a time frame. And so now we can very clearly see that this quarter went bullish without a doubt. So our continuation would be up here at that quarter's high, and obviously our reversal would be at the previous quarter's low. and we end up getting that continuation. So now we'll go ahead and get into the intersession AMD, and I'll go ahead and stay on this example right here. I'll run back over it. Okay, so remember the tip that I told you? Whatever type of AMD I say, weekly, daily, intersession, just break that word up into quarters, or break that time frame up into quarters. So we're talking about the intersession AMD right now, which would be breaking each session up into quarters. So something that will help you do this is, again, box. I'm sure you've probably seen this before. I'm sure you've probably seen these same colors and settings before. If you haven't, I'll click on it right here to give you a chance to go ahead and pause the video and enter these if you like. All right, so the way that we do this is we drag this box from the session start to the session end, because we're breaking the session up into quarters. So the start of the session would be at 6 p.m. This is Tokyo or Asia. And the end of it would be at midnight. All right, so it's going to look a little funky on the 1 hour. Just have to go down a time frame. All right, and now we can see it's perfectly broken up into quarters. So we'll go ahead and we'll get on to London, because we usually don't expect much out of Asia anyways. All right, so now that we're coming into Q1 of London, right? What do we see happens in Q1 of London? I'll draw some boxes. Maybe that'll make it a little easier to see. All right, so this is all of the data from Q1. Q2, we expect manipulation. So either this Q1's high or this Q1's low. All right, we end up taking out Q2's low. Now that leaves us with our potential targets of manipulation again, or fulfilling this AMD objective in Q3. So I'll go ahead and draw a box for you. So now that we're coming into Q3, we get manipulation again. And the thing that we know about Q3 is it's the distribution phase. So it could give us manipulation, or it could distribute to the AMD target, or it could distribute bearish. So it could basically give us that manipulation and then continue, right? We're just going to have to use PD arrays to figure out which is going to happen. So now in Q3, we already have gotten that manipulation. So we could potentially go and take that AMD target out in this same session, or we could wait for Q4 to do that. So let's see what happens. We go even further and we start distributing all the way down here. Now, why could we possibly, having an AMD target up here, why could we possibly have distributed away from it? Because this wasn't, this right here, this area wasn't manipulation. Why? Because we continued. So why would price want to distribute away from the AMD target? Well, because it has a higher time frame objective. And not just this liquidity pool. This isn't just any liquidity pool. What is this? This is our previous session low. Or other words, this is Q1's low. What quarter are we in? Q2 as a whole. If we're looking at this from a daily perspective, we're just looking session by session. We're in Q2. So the main objective of London through this whole time period from noon to 6 a.m. is to get down here or to come up here. The point being, we're meant to manipulate. So what happens on the higher time frame with quarterly theory is more important. The same way how with PD arrays, those are more important. A 4 hour for value gap is always going to take precedence over a 1 hour, and so on and so forth. So that is the reason we experienced failure from this intercession perspective, but from the actual daily perspective, starting here, we've gotten exactly what we wanted so far. So this kind of puts it into perspective, not the risk that is associated with not only trading lower time frames, but like trading really low time frames, like taking scalps, like using 5-minute narratives, stuff like that. So, you can experiment with this and do some testing and see what it is you like more. Maybe you like using 5-minute or 15-minute narratives and you like focusing on the intercession AMD, or maybe you prefer the daily AMD. Me, I'm always focused on where price is wanting to go for that entire day. So that is why the weekly AMD is my main priority. But if you prefer to scalp, you know, if you prefer to swing trade, you can go and you can use the monthly AMD. That would be breaking the month up into quarters. So, it's all up to you, whatever you want to do. So let's continue and let's see what price ends up wanting to do in Q4. Now, what is our objective? Q4 starts right here at 4:30. What is our objective for Q4? Continuation or reversal, which is exactly what we ended up getting. And this reversal in Q4 aligns with the idea that we had originally from the daily perspective that Q2 or London only came down here instead of expanding towards the AMD target for that session. It only came down here because we needed to manipulate this first. And so now we should expect that bullish movement if this is true manipulation. So let's go ahead and see how the rest of the day chooses to play out. All right, and very beautifully we do end up going ahead and not only taking our previous quarter's high in the form of that reversal, but we do end up going ahead and expanding to the AMD target, which remember is still live because it's Q4. Right? There is no such thing as a Q5 or anything, but there are still Friday and Monday protocols, but those are only for the weekly perspective. So daily and below, we're just looking for our traditional accumulation, manipulation, distribution, or reverse, and then reversal or continuation. That's all we're looking for. I'll do this one more time on the next session just to solidify it, and that'll be it. I'm not really going to go too deep into time because I feel like this covers everything we need to know about time. This explains why we enter at the times we do. Because, for example, I'm not taking any setups in Q1 of a session. So I will trade Q1 of the day. I will trade Asia, but only on USD/JPY. And I'll be honest, EU. Only on USD/JPY and only on EU. And I know it sounds bizarre to trade EU and Asia, but that is probably, I think that is the only exception of a currency that we trade outside of times that align with, that instrument is euro and the US dollar. So US dollar, automatically know that applies to New York and that applies to New York PM or Sydney session. And we know that applies to London as well because they trade the euro over there, right? So, or sorry, because that the euro is a currency used in somewhere in Europe. But Asia session does not correlate with Euro USD at all. However, the dollar, if the dollar is ready to expand, it does not matter what time it is. And because we look for the same narrative, we want to match our narratives and ideally match our targets, our objectives with whatever we see on the dollar when we're trading Forex, it doesn't make sense not to trade EU, because EU, for the most part, is pretty much a copy of the dollar chart. It's just inversed. So to me, it doesn't make sense for me to say trade out of a 4 hour bullish for value gap um, at 9 or 10 p.m. on USD JPY when that 4 hour bullish for value gap is matching on the dollar, but to not take that setup on EU, because EU should be doing the exact same thing as the dollar, just inverse. So if the dollar's moving, EU should be moving. Go ahead and draw a little picture of this if you want to, or screenshot this, because I'm about to delete this just so it doesn't get too confusing for y'all. All right, so this New York session, it begins at 6 a.m. and it ends at noon. So we're going to draw this out there and break this whole area up into quarters. And I'll draw the boxes again. Why not? Okay, so we've gotten that manipulation to the previous quarter's high. And we might want to take out the previous quarter's low as well. I'm not too concerned with that. All right, so now coming into this Q3, what do we expect when Q2 takes both sides of Q1? We expect another period of manipulation in Q3, excuse me. All we're looking for in Q3 is manipulation, meaning every phase is getting pushed over by one. So Q2 now becomes our accumulation phase, Q3 becomes our manipulation, and then Q4 would become our distribution phase where we seek our AMD target. So let's see what price ends up wanting to do. We go ahead and end up moving to that high, and then we end up flipping back to that low again. Once this happens 2 quarters in a row, so once Tuesday does this, and then if Wednesday does this to Tuesday, you no longer can use the AMD because Q4 is no longer set at that continuation or reversal. AMD target has to exist at this point once Q4 opens, or what is now considered to be Q3. So you can't take advantage of the AMD from this point, no matter what time period you're on. If that's what I saw, if London took both sides of Asia and then New York took both sides of Asia, there's no way, there's nothing for me to do with the AMD for the rest of the day. If Tuesday took both sides of Monday, then Wednesday took both sides of Tuesday, I can't use the AMD for the rest of the week. If obviously we see Q2 of New York took both sides of Q1 of New York, and then Q3 of New York did the same thing and took both sides of Q2 of New York, we can't use the AMD for New York session anymore. So I hope this clears things up. I hope this, I feel like this will be the final piece to like putting the AMD completely together, because the weekly AMD using the daily time frame, that's the easiest thing to learn. But once you watch this video, it'll kind of put it all together, solidify it, and make it make sense, and really help you understand how it works and how fractal it is, and so on and so forth. So stay tuned for the next one. Peace. So this is the movement that we experienced in Q1.